Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while. I've been away for a bit for good reason. Reasons that we will discuss in this video. This is going to be my first video, obviously, of 2026. I have every intention of getting things back up and moving at a more regular pace on the channel. Got some new equipment, so you might be able to see that hopefully the quality of the video, maybe the audio as well, is a little bit better than in previous videos. This is the DJI Osmo Nano camera, which I've had for about a week and is just awesome. But I have good news. Obviously, if you've been following on this channel for a while, you know that I had been preparing for the CCNA and had really started the channel as part of that learning journey. And I passed it. So I passed the CCNA about 5 or 6 days ago. And I will say that I feel great right now. And I didn't realize how stressed I was in the lead up to the test. If you would have asked me, I would have said, oh, no, I'm fine. But I know that in retrospect, I was probably really stressed out, high on cortisol levels, because now I feel radically different than I did in the days, 2-3 days before the test and during the test. It was an intense experience. So I'm going to just talk about the experience, why I took the CCNA, what resources I used to be able to pass it on the first try. I don't know what score I got. I'm not sure if I will know that or if they release that anymore. I've been on the Cisco site that shows, scoring stuff or at least shows your certifications, and I haven't seen anything on there. So, but I do know that I passed and my certification stuff is on its way. So that's good. Very exciting. I've got some notes here just to follow along. And yeah, you have a much wider field of view than I'm used to. Actually, I'm like monitoring from my phone. So in an effort not to constantly be looking down, I'm going to put it like right here so I can see it much better. So yeah, past the CCNA, I'm going to talk about that. So first of all, why? I've got this up here. So why did I take the CCNA? I always felt like this. Let's see. Meme skipping stairs to cybersecurity. This one. All right. So I always had a fear that I had done something like this. So I haven't really talked much about my background, but I started in testing. I started in QA when I entered tech, and that was in 2007. So it's been almost 20 years. Worked my way through just manual testing, exploratory testing, those roles, and then to test automation. Worked on building, test automation pipelines, feature tests, the sort of Capybara, Selenium, whole thing in the Rails ecosystem and in Java ecosystems. Did that for a while, got into management, did some consulting, and then, led a team of test engineers for a startup that was eventually acquired by Cisco. And so I work for Cisco now. And I guess I'm supposed to say that these thoughts are mine and not Cisco's. But anyway, I've worked now for Cisco. I came in as part of a startup acquisition and have been there for 5, almost 6 years, I want to say. Long story short, I went from that testing role and did a bunch of work to get into a security engineering role. But one area that I had always felt like I had skipped over was the networking area. So fast forward to Cisco time, and I get to Cisco and I realize, like, wow, Cisco has these certifications that I hadn't really ever considered in an earlier time. Why don't I give them why don't I see what they're all about? And so obviously the CCNA came up. I really didn't know how, I didn't really know much about its reputation until maybe a year and 3 or 4 months ago, when I really started this process of studying. So, and that's another thing to note. To get the CCNA with fairly little networking background took me over a year. Now, I mean, I've got kids and sports, and I'm in a band, working full time, family life, etc. So if I had been doing it full time and just studying for 8 or 9 hours a day, it would have been a little bit different, but that's not the case. And that's okay. I just kind of went at a pace that I could sustain, and I try to like learn the material. And all really it was is an effort to like fulfill this step here. I wanted to be solid on that, or at least get a more solid footing. And I'm really glad that I did it. In retrospect, it was a really good idea because I feel much more confident now, not only in my current role, but thinking about the future and what other things I might do. This was the way to go. And I'm also thinking about what I'm going to do next, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So that was why. I just wanted to build some better confidence in this networking sort of area. I grew to love the material. A lot of my background has been in like languages. And I look at protocols, routing protocols, the way these devices are communicating with one another on the network as kind of like a language, little dialects that they all have. And I've studied human languages for a long time, and that was kind of like my focus as a student. And a lot of similarities there. I've always thought this, and in music too. So it kind of makes sense that this I found, appealing. And like I said, I grew to love that networking stuff, and I'd like to go further with it. So we talked about the timeline. Like I said, 1 year, 3 months of study. So this goes back to, October of last year. I took some breaks. But I kind of got burnt out a little bit from time to time, and would stop for like a month or two, and then try to get back into it. And finally, I made a long-term push when I started this channel. Actually, that was when I really kind of was getting serious about it and sharing, the learning journey and trying to teach some of what I was learning as part of the process. So that was a big component of it too, this channel. So thanks again for everybody who's been here for the ride so far. Okay, resources. So the first resource I used was Cisco U. Now, if I didn't work for Cisco, would I have used this? I'm not sure. I can't honestly say that I would or that I wouldn't have. It is not cheap, I don't think. Maybe you can buy a single course and it's more cheap and it's less expensive. But I don't know. And so the first thing I did when pursuing the CCNA was I went through this whole course, and it took a long time. I think it's like 40 something hours of content. What is it? 37 hours and 25 minutes of content. You can see right there. And again, a lot of this was my first exposure really at this sort of level of detail to a lot of it. The OSI model, routing protocols, some of the security stuff even. I was newly exposed to it. So to be honest, I got through all the content, and still did not feel very comfortable. And I was taking the assessments that you can kind of see in here. There's assessments you can do, labs, etc. Definitely wasn't comfortable with the labs after my first pass through this thing. Was failing the assessments, just didn't really get the content to a degree that would be necessary to pass the test. Definitely not. Once I did this, I was not ready to take the test, and I assume that's normal. I don't know what the actual failure rate is for first time. I will say, and I'm going to talk about my exam experience later, but I thought I was failing the test throughout the test. I just thought I was failing. And I had, anyway, we'll talk about it. But I had studied so much, and apparently I had studied enough. But man, I thought for sure I was failing. Nonetheless, I went through this entire CCNA thing, and it took a long time. And when I got done, I can't say that I was like super comfortable with the material, regardless. And that brought me to the next one, which was not this, actually. Although this was a good video. Actually, it was a different video that I was thinking about. Sorry. Jeremy's IT Lab. So anybody who's done CCNA stuff knows about Jeremy's IT Lab and his free CCNA course, which you can see here.
Welcome.
And I just can't say thank you enough to Jeremy for putting that course to the internet for everyone to learn from. I went through the course, did all the labs, and the labbing, of course, is important. And it really helped me understand things. Just really helped me understand things. The way he presents the material, it was my second pass through the material. So I think that you really kind of need to do at least 3 passes like through the material if it's new to you to be able to succeed on the test. And it's a lot of material, so it took a while. But I went through Jeremy's course, I think twice, and worked on, obviously from this channel, we've done them together, a lot of the labs together. But this wasn't invaluable. This was the most important resource for actually learning the concepts and the material, the Anki cards, the little match cards or whatever that you can get on the Anki app. Those were very valuable. And just like I said, the way he presents the material. So thank you, Jeremy. You are a big reason that I passed the CCNA. Next up, there were a couple books. And this one is here. So I did some researching on the internet at one point, and we've actually on this channel done a couple of these labs. This was a good book too. Truth be told, I did not make it all the way through this book, but this is Cisco CCNA in 60 days. It comes recommended if you're reading like Reddit threads and whatnot. Very good book. Again, another pass through the material explained in text format, just to continue to reinforce the material. And it was a good resource. I would recommend it. I think what I would recommend now is that one resource alone probably isn't going to cut it, or at least it didn't for me. It's almost like you need multiple views of the problem, multiple ways that the content is presented, like by Jeremy or by Cisco U or by the CCNA in 60 Days book. For the long stretch of learning the content, actually learning it, and we're not even talking about testing ourselves on it, but just to like learn the theory, the fundamentals, etc. Those were the big 3. And Jeremy's IT Lab was the biggest by far. All right, so now kind of like fast forward, getting closer, and I'm sure again you've all heard of these. This is Boson XSIM. Another very useful resource for me. Let's see if it's logging. You can see that I was failing the day of the exam. Now, not by much. And I think people say, like, look, if you're getting 800 on XSIM, you're probably ready to pass the exam. And that turned out to be true in my case. But like I said, I thought I was failing the exam throughout it. And I will also say this. There was content on the exam that I didn't come across in Boson, either on XSIM or NetSIM. So I will say that. Really be aware of what is on the sort of the exam breakdown, because there was some stuff on there that I was like, dang, I'm not ready for this. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not like these resources are wonderful. and they really prepared me for the style and the nature of the difficulty of the questions. That was very true. Um, Without XSIM, and I will in a moment show you NetSim. Without these, I don't think I would have passed. And you can see I got NetSim, which is like the network simulator, which has a bunch of labs. Let's see if I'm authenticated still. I am. Yeah, so I'll show it to you. Um, like you can just go through and do these really nice labs. This was, again, a very, very nice tool, similar to XSIM, obviously. And I did these tools. I went through all of these labs in the lead up, like in the week or two before I actually took the test. You can see I didn't really even make it all the way through everything because I got down to the wire. I was doing, exam simulations and labbing up to the morning of the test, which I took at 2 p.m. Central Time. And so I would consider XSIM and NetSim like after you've like learned the content and you're feeling like, okay, maybe I'm ready to take the test. I would utilize these to like really reinforce the lab stuff and just the theory, because XSIM will test you to a level of difficulty that I found on the test. And a lot of people were saying, just on the internet, so take that for what you will, that, Boson XSIM questions are significantly more difficult than the CCNA itself questions. I did not find that to be the case. I thought the CCNA itself questions were they were definitely difficult. It was not easy. You think to yourself like, oh, okay, I bet everything's going to be like a dot, 0.0.0.255 wild card. Like I'm never going to have to really, whatever, do the math to get like a non/24 subnet or /24 wildcard equivalent, etc. That was not the case. It was like the test was throwing out exotic ones that you really did have to calculate. So don't fall into that trap. It was a bit of a trap that I thought to myself, like while taking the test, man, this is crazy. I thought it was going to be easier in that regard. So I don't think they simplify it too much, at least in my experience with my question set. Another thing was like logistics wise, and I guess we're sort of getting into exam experience. Those were all the resources. Boson NetSim, XSIM, Jeremy's IT Lab, Cisco U, and my Cisco and CCNA books. So those are like widely recommended. All those resources are covered extensively by various people on YouTube, etc. So if you've been in this game for a while and you've been studying for a while, I'm sure you've come across them. But that's what I was able to use to pass on the first attempt. So my experience with the exam itself, like I said, I was much more stressed than I thought that I was. I sort of lost focus of a lot of my physical fitness stuff that I'm trying to like scrap back right now. And, obviously with the holidays, etc., that doesn't help. But, I kind of had like let a handful of things go that I would have been more focused on had I not been doing the exam. And I guess that makes sense, but you don't want to go and like do something. You don't want to become unhealthy, I think, as a result. And I might be, with the stress that I now feel like I had, I think I kind of was in a sort of getting toward the unhealthy realm as a result of the focus I had on passing this thing. So is that good? I don't know. I mean, I feel great that I passed it, and I hope it has a positive effect on my career and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm glad that I ended that, intensity when I did, because I think if I gone a little bit further, I probably would have had to stop and take a break because I was getting to the end of what was healthy, I think. So I wanted to mention that. So just be careful of your stress. And like I said, if somebody would have asked me how stressed out I was about it, I wouldn't have said that I was. But when I came down after the test, I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt like just like coming down off a drug or something. It was like you didn't realize you were as like wound up as you were. So that was part of my experience. The next part of the experience was quite silly, but I found that the text on the test, the font, was very small, and it made it like the strain on my eyes is from staring at the screen like so intensely and closely had an effect on me. It increased like the stress level of the exam experience. So that was something. Now I bet that I could have increased it, but and that is silly. I should have just done that. But I didn't even think about anything else but answering the questions, because you're looking at this clock and it's like ticking down, ticking down. And I had gone through the labs, and my labs were straightforward. I will say that. But there were some things I didn't know. And so it was a stressful experience kind of going through the labs. And so I got out of the labs and I got into the questions sections. And there were a lot of questions. And I had about a minute or a little bit more per question. So at no point was I like, you know what, let me like adjust the font. Let me find out where are the settings for this app, which is the Pearson View app. I did it remotely from my basement. So that was the first time I'd ever done a remote exam, a proctored remote exam where the person's clearly watching you and listening. You can't leave the screen, etc. And so that was stressful. And I wish I would have taken 20 seconds to figure out the font size issue, but it was a very small font size. And it's like, I'm trying to like look directly at the screen to see. And it made it more difficult. Like I said, yeah, I got enough questions to be about a minute or 20, I don't know, minute per question. When I finished the exam, I had about 5 minutes left. Like I said, when I clicked, grade exam or whatever for the last one, I thought like 50-50. Like it's either maybe I did this or maybe I didn't. And I did. So I can show you, not really. I was going to say I can't really show you. I can kind of show you. I just don't want to have anything crazy up there. But you can see that I got my email saying that I passed. So I got my certification ID or whatever, Cisco ID, etc. So, yeah, a wild experience, a wonderful experience. I will say I grew to love the material, and I would like to continue with it. It made me a better technologist. There's no doubt. I have the ability to speak confidently on issues and topics in a way that prior to this I really did not. So very thankful. I'm glad that I chose to do this. I'm glad it was a test of perseverance and patience. Your ego wants you to have the ability to say that you passed, and that's where like your patience is tested. Like you can't. I was thinking like, oh man, I really just want it. I want it. It was almost like my precious, like that whole kind of thing. Like your ego is like really pushing you to like maybe try to test before you're ready or whatever. And who knows where that leads. But I'm glad that I waited. I'm glad that I was patient. But it was a true test of patience and perseverance. Like I wanted to just say screw it so many times, but I didn't, and I kept going. And yeah, I'm proud of myself. It was a test. Now going forward, I'm looking at what I'm going to do next, and I think I might do some other. I don't think I'm going to go directly into CCNP or CCNP security. Eventually, I would like to do that. I'm going to do cyber related things and cloud. I think I'm going to do AWS security. Try to knock those out this year. Hopefully, maybe even the next 6 months. But AWS, get some cloud. I've worked in AWS for a long time, and I would like to have the sort of validation of the knowledge that I've got in that realm too. So I'm going to focus that on there, and then I think like the cyber core, which is like the professional level cybersecurity. cert. I think that my knowledge of cybersecurity topics is going to be much better or more detailed than it was on the networking stuff. So hopefully the amount of time necessary for something like that is a little bit less. I think that's it. That was my experience. These are all my notes, and I think I went through everything. If anybody has any questions or if anybody's on the journey, feel free to reach out. You can, I guess, DM or just leave a comment. And I hope this message finds you all well. I'm energized and back, starting work again tomorrow. So we'll get back into doing some labs together, hopefully some interesting lab content. I really like the idea of using the labs to demonstrate different attack scenarios or things like that, or networking concepts. I'm going to be getting into the cloud stuff, so I'll hopefully have some of that. I do still intend to do some of the drone stuff, so hopefully I'll have some of that for you. But my goal is just to make this an interesting place to learn something new and to kind of talk through tech career stuff, certification type stuff, life, etc. So I am delighted that you're all still here, and I will see you again soon. All right. Have a good night.